Alrighty, welcome back to part 4. So this one will knock off the remaining slides of this chapter. It's a big chapter, lots of stuff in it, and lots of things for you to actually go and play with in your virtual machines and having a look at these. So PowerShell is the ability to automate something going on within the environment, and it uses commandlets, which are basically little applications that represent various commands. You can rename or create aliases for various commandlets, so you can have your own naming convention set up so that people can't work out exactly what you're calling, things like that. If you want to hide what you're doing. The other thing is you don't have to echo your script on the screen within the shell window. So it basically opens up a command line and you write the script of what you want it to do. Now, it's a very powerful environment that this happens to run in, and you need to know your system well to be able to automate it. I'm not a systems guru. I'm a router and switch guy, so explore, learn is the best way to do things. I highly recommend that with everything we do in IT is to just get stuck in and do stuff. If you break it, so what? Just refresh it, start again. Alright? You will learn by your mistakes. It's an old saying, I know, but it's very true. If we do labs and you follow the script word for word and nothing ever goes wrong, you don't remember as much as the labs that don't go right and you have to spend time working out what went wrong and fault finding it. Basically, you remember those lessons far more than the ones that go through without any hiccups. Okay, the command CMD window has been the default command window since Windows 10 build 14.791. Now, if you're like me, that means absolutely nothing. But it's the type of silly question you would find on test somewhere. So to open the command shell, type CMD in the search box, or use Windows R to open and run the run box. Control-Shift-Enter to run command prompt as the administrator if you are not running on an administrative account. And basic commands can be found using the help function within the command prompt window. So some of the various commands is the /# to get specific command help features. The help command gives you the general list of commands that are available. Up arrow to move through, so your arrow keys up and down to move through your history. Control C is basically your break command for, exiting any script that's currently running, CLS to clear the screen. So there's lots and lots of commands and characters that can be used within here, and there's parameters that can be used. So you need to have a reference file letting you know exactly the makeup that you need and the characteristics of the extensions that need to be entered when you use a command. So, okay, within the notations here, it's saying, text without brackets must be typed exactly. Text inside the greater than and less than. A value's got to be entered in that area. Square brackets are optional inputs. So you get to see how the command breakup is used with the various notations there. Command is just a window, a command line window, so a CLI interface. PowerShell is the actual scripting of commands together and running it within a command window. So PowerShell is what you use to automate functions within the Microsoft environment, and the command is getting access to a CLI interface window. So if you just bring up here, so if you just type in CMD in the search prompt, this just brings up a command prompt window, which gives you the interface. So here you can type in your commands. Okay, it isn't scripted. You have to actually fire up PowerShell and create your script so that you can run the script, which automates a series of commands and options so that you don't have to manually write everything again. So an example is if you've got various settings that you need to make sure are set first thing in the morning. Opening PowerShell is a separate thing than opening command line. So command line is just that. So the command prompt just gives you access to the command line interface. PowerShell is a separate tool that is specifically for creating automation scripts. Okay. Does that help clarify those two questions? So PowerShell is not just a command line interface. It's actually the tool you use to create automation scripts. That is basically run within the command line. Clear as mud? Everybody's gone quiet. I'll take that as clear as mud. Okay. We'll look at doing some exercises on creating PowerShells and that later. Okay. So working within the command line interface, it's just text-based. There's no GUI. So it's like working in the old Linux where it was just command line interface. So you basically need to do everything like old school, where it's all just a text-based interface and you type in commands and get text-based information displayed back to you. So you need to be able to navigate through the file structure within the command line interface. So here you need to know how to change drives. So by just typing in the drive letter, you can switch drives, and then using the directory command will display the contents of the directory, and it'll have the basic output of it. If I bring up my command prompt here again, is okay, so it's changing the drive, do a directory, and this is saying, you know, that's an actual download folder, this is programs folder, and that's another folder which was a website that I used to manage for many moons ago. So and then you use the command cd for change directory, and then you would type in the directory or folder that you want to move to, and then look at all the lovely files. Now, doesn't put them in nice orders or anything like that. It's just all in there with various. So I have a Land Cruiser folder. There's my resume, various PDFs. There's all sorts of lovely stuff that is in there. So just be aware that you can access things via the command line, and in certain circumstances it is important for you to do it via the command line. So these would be what I would refer to as the old DOS commands. So the original disk operating system are basically what these commands are from. So CD for change directory, ND for make directory, R for remove directory. Then if you want to move files, you can move the file from one place to another. You can rename files or directories with the ren command. You can redirect outputs, so you can do a directory and tell it to put that into a text file. This is very useful when you're creating automation things. One of the things that we used to do was to, when automating stuff that modify files, you would do a directory command, put it in the text file, and then use the text file as part of your input for your automation, things like that. So delete, copy, xcopy, all these things are available via the command line. There is a huge list of command lines, commands that you can use within the command line interface that is available, and you will learn the main ones as you use them. So check disk, formatting disk, disk partitioning is all available via the command line interface. So you can basically anything that you can do in the GUI, you can do via the command line interface as long as you know the appropriate commands to get it done. Because the GUI is basically just a graphic user interface which would execute commands on your behalf without you actually knowing the exact command. That's the purpose of the GUI interface. So here, just like in the GUI under Task Manager, we can turn things on and off. We can do it via the command line with the task list, task kill, just, all in here. Good one is the shutdown command, power off local remote computer. That was always fun to use in school. Shut down other computers with remote access. Not that we used to do that. Okay, group policy updates. This is where you can push out a policy to other remote systems. So you can basically write the policies on your machine, make sure that they work the way you want them to work, and then you push it out as an update to the remote machines. NetUser allows you to get information about network resources and network users. So there's those ones. Running system, so Notepad or Explorer, you can start up these various surface. The run command, which is Windows 7, okay, whereas now we use basically the search command is the run command effectively. Okay, so you can type in the MMC command and that directly in the and there it is, the run command. So run as administrator, file, click on it, and no, I'm not going to go in there and do all that sort of stuff. So just remember that we have slight changes in the GUI interface and where we can find things between Windows 7 and Windows 10. Networking. Now we don't need to know anything about networking. Alright. So in an enterprise, you would generally have a domain set up, which you have domain policies, and you can have systems set up basically on servers that are a domain controller, which you apply all your policies and resource management and things like that on this domain controller, and then everybody that joins the domain gets those policies and that applied to the local workstation. Your work group is a collection of workstations and servers that are grouped together and can be used to push out, again, access and shared resources and things like that. Okay. Homegroup's been removed in Windows 10, so don't need to worry about that anymore. But basically, your profiles, you still have network types. In Windows 10, you basically select whether your network's a public or a private network, and that sets the type of trust values that are applied to those network connections. Mapping and sharing of drives. Under the share, you basically point it to a drive or a folder, and you say, I want to share this location on the tree. So from the directory that you point it to down is available under the share, and you then allocate the permissions that are available via that share. So you can create it so that people can only read the contents, they have change rights, or they have full control over what's going on in that area. Administrative shares are available for you via the computer management panel. These ones will be designated with a $sign. Now these will not be visible to general users. Okay, so they're hidden. They have special privileges added to them. Okay, so only local administrators within a group will be able to see them and modify them. Okay, so just be aware of that. So sharing resources and various items there that the administrators want to have control and share between each of their systems will be the administrative shares. Local resources, so making your discoverable and turning on print sharing is sharing your local connections to other members within the network. You can do this via password or just straight connections. Another thing you do at home is maybe set up media streaming throughout the various computers you've got at home. Printing sharing versus network printer mapping. There's a little different. So when a printer is shared, users with the correct permissions can access it. When you share your printer on a network, users can find that printer within the network resources via the browse command. Okay, so that basically they don't have to be given specific permission to access the share. They can browse and connect to it via the network resources command. We've all looked at setting up your interfaces within the environment. We've all done it within the labs in the other areas. So we've gone in here, changed the IP settings and things like that. So here we can set up under the network interface, we can add or change specific controls as far as how we connect to the various networks. So here, if we've got a wireless card and a wired card in a laptop, for example, we can come in and configure the individual settings for the adapters. So the network cards. So the wireless setup is separate to the wired separate. Yeah, that was confusing the way I went through that. But basically each network interface has its own control options that you can set. And when we delve into wireless settings, you can have multiple profiles set up to connect to various different wireless access points that you visit. and can connect to automatically or require manual connection. So there are some of the options you can work through. Again, setting up the IP, you can, by default, your IP configuration is set to dynamic. You have to manually change it and configure it if you want to put specific information in, such as your IP address, your gateway, and your subnet mask. They're the main ones. We've all had this one done, so I won't spend forever on it. Setting a network profile, here you designate whether it's public or private. So private ones are trusted networks that the PC connects to, whether it's your laptop or a desktop, doesn't matter. Public profiles disables your sharing functions and tries to hide your machine from the rest of the network because you're connecting to a untrusted network resource. So you want to shut down your machine so it makes it harder to find and attack. Okay, so basically we would come in here to the individual interfaces for troubleshooting purposes, not to generally work out whether we've got connection to the internet or anything like that. So basically you come in here and find out the current status of your connection by opening up, clicking on your interface, and then it'll give you a very brief description whether it can get to a central point on the internet to confirm its status, and it'll give you how long it's been up and what its maximum speed is, what's been sent and received over the last few minutes. Then you've got options to go into further details to find out exactly what the IP address is, the subnet mask, the gateway, the MAC address. All of that is available under details. You can change the properties of the interface, you can disable it, or you can help do the automatic troubleshooting with diagnosing the function. Under the command line interface, we can get the same information using the ipconfig command, and we can use the /all to get all of that information displayed to us, such as the IP address and mask and all that lovely goof. Release, renew, display DNS, so any IP address resolutions that it has, names, flush it, remove it. So again, and basically it displays all of them that you have configured. So this includes any virtual interfaces that you have for your VM machines, any taps for Kaspersky secure interfaces, any VPNs and things like that will come up as well. So this is the VMnet one, and there's your MAC address, IPv6 local link, IPv4, IPv6. Okay, so it gives it all to you. This is the main one. So, and what? All right, so display DNS. So as you can see, there's lots and lots of. Okay, so this is the name, and time to live counter, so that counts down. When the counter expires, it removes the entry automatically, and there's your IP address for that domain name. And you know, you'll have lots and lots of entries, especially if you've been searching the internet for various items. There are lots of applications that and services that run in the background that do their own connections. Okay, Ad Haven. If you've got a web browser out, there's going to be lots of different ones. Oh look, Discord server. I wonder what that's from. Alright, so you can do that. Just to give you an idea, ipconfig is very useful because what you enter in the GUI may not actually get applied to the interface itself. Just because the GUI says it's A doesn't mean it's actually been applied. This was very, very common, especially in the earlier editions of Windows. You would set something in XP, for example. You would set the IP addresses and that in the interface, and it would prompt you for a restart. It required that restart to actually apply those configuration changes to the interface. So if you didn't do the restart, you didn't actually have network connectivity. So just be aware of that. Command line commands that we use for checking that things are working correctly. Ping, we've all talked about before. Trace, route, NS lookup. So these are different ways of getting information and testing that you can resolve information. So NS lookup, you gives you an IP name, so you can, depending on how you use it, you can type in the host name and it'll give you an IP address, or you can type in an IP address and it'll give you the domain name attached to it. Trace route traces your path to that destination and gives you various bits of information, as in round trip timers, device names, things like that in the path. Wireless networks, we'll actually go through this several times during subjects in this course, and we actually have a couple of weeks on a specific subject for setting up and configuring wireless networks. So we'll go through it all again then as well. So basically, when you set up a wireless network, you have to tell it what type of authentication to use in the connection process. Leaving it blank means it is open. You don't have any encryption or authentication processes to use. Then you've got the various security types. Then WEAP, which is wired equivalent protocol, is the very basic one. Do not use. Then you have the various WPAs 1, 2, and then personal or enterprise. So when it says personal, you have pre-shared keys. In other words, you need to set up the key manually on each end. Enterprise is where it goes to a server to authenticate your credentials against. So it uses a Radius server, and basically your username and password is sent to that Radius server, and it will look your credentials up and then basically reply saying you're authorized or not. VPNs can be set up. Okay, AnyConnect is Cisco product for a VPN, and basically you type in the other end of the VPN, so the name you want to connect to, and then it will ask you for credentials, things like that. Actually, do I have mine running? Okay, so there it is there, and you type in what you want to connect to there, and this will generally be the domain name of the server that you're connecting to. So vpnkangan.edu.au, something like that, would be an example. So basically you use a VPN client to set up your connection to the remote service, and it will negotiate the various elements of how it encrypts the data and your passwords and authentication. Okay, so you can actually set up VPN services directly within Microsoft itself, but most VPN connections are via a client, and that is an application that you install and manage the connections with, such as the Cisco Connect. 9 times out of 10, Telnet and SSH is disabled in a corporate environment because they don't want you using these commands from a workstation and attacking the infrastructure within the enterprise. But if you're the administrator, you want these tools available to you. Telnet is the least secure, and we will be going through plenty of examples using Telnet and SSH through our networking course. And basically, Telnet is a remote connection software protocol that allows you to send commands to a remote machine. Secure Shell is a encrypted service equivalent to Telnet. So Telnet, you can see everything and intercept it because it's all in plain text. And Secure Shell actually encrypts the connection, so you can't actually see the commands being used. When you set up a SSH connection, you need to have a username and password, the authentication method being, so you set up keys and all sorts of things. We'll go into that more in the networking element. We'll actually set up a router as an SSH server and lock a router down. All this is coming your way in the near future. So authentication methods, the most common one that we will use at the entry level is just use standard username and password. Then you can actually use Kerberos which is a dedicated protocol that ties in with things like Active Directory and single sign-in authentication, things like that. Host-based authentication, where you actually have a key or already encrypted inbuilt into your operating system that it uses automatically. And public key authentication, basically, again, password type thing. So next bit, we look at preventative maintenance. So basically, we need to go through systems and make sure that we do housekeeping on a regular basis, because, you know, desktops and that lock up, they create all sorts of little shattered files and things like that. So you've got to run these tools on a scheduled maintenance route and clean them up. Otherwise, you'll get performance degrading across time, because you're not doing any scheduled maintenance on the systems. Now, this includes checking your hard drive for errors, defragmenting the hard drive so that it keeps it at optimized performance, creating backups, updating, patching your system for updates, whether it's applications or operating systems, antivirus, all that needs to be kept current. If you don't keep these things current, you will be in trouble. And I've just had coffee delivery. Thank you. Oh, that was a bonus. All right, so within these things, you can schedule when you're going to push up updates. So in an enterprise, we would set it up that we push updates out from a central server. Okay. We would not have individual workstations going to Microsoft for updates, automatic updates. We would schedule the updates and point them to a server that we control. Okay, so as an enterprise administrator, you download the patches and updates and so forth from Microsoft. As you can see here, Microsoft has updates basically second Tuesday of each month. So you would go there, say on the Wednesday, because of time difference in Australia, download those updates to your local server, and then push those updates out to your clients on Wednesday night or something like that. The reason you do that in an enterprise is so that you conserve the bandwidth and download usage within the enterprise, because business gets charged a monthly fee for the connection plus every megabyte of data transferred. Okay, they don't have unlimited plans and things like that for data. Businesses get charged for every megabyte of data they consume. So you don't want, if you've got 100 PCs downloading a 10 meg patch, you're getting charged for it. Whereas you can download it once and push it out to 100 machines, you've just saved a lot of bandwidth for the company. Restore points should be created automatically when you do updates and changes to the operating system, such as changing features, updating hardware, installing new applications. It should create a restore point, which is basically a snapshot of the configuration files, and it saves them off. And in theory, I say that with a smile on my face, you can roll back to a restore point and recover from a potential crash created by the change that was just done. Unfortunately, some devices do not create their restore points in a reliable fashion. I'll just leave it at that. Hard drives should be backed up. You can do it via Microsoft. It has an inbuilt backup facility, but in most enterprises they'll have a third-party system doing backups to tapes and things like that rather than individuals. Okay, just be aware. That's why we in an enterprise, all your file systems are kept on servers because they're easy to back up when they're in a central location. You don't want to be going out to every workstation and backing up files on workstations. It's just too messy to do. But for a home system, getting in there and doing a backup and saving it is good. Remember, in virtual machines, we can create backups of the virtual machine by just copying that entire drive out and saving it in a different location. So doing backups on virtual machines is just a matter of copying those drives out. Okay. And when you're looking at bigger enterprise level virtualization, like VMsphere and things like that, you can set those up to back up all the virtual machines that it manages as well. Just be aware that you should allocate time for that. Okay, last section. You've seen this before, so I'm not going to spend a great deal of time. Just be aware of the 6 steps of troubleshooting. No, there's only a couple more slides. So we've all done the 6 steps before. I would suggest you might want to put a notation somewhere about these. They should become second nature. We see them. Common problems and solutions, I'll let you work your way through it on the chapter. You click on the various items and I'll give you a description and possible solutions for those. So I won't go through them here. You can read the chapter and click through to your heart's content. So finally, Windows configuration. We talked about setting up the desktop and File Explorer, the various control panels that you can use. We had a look at the command line and the tools that are available via the command line. As I said, basically anything you can do through the GUI, you can do in the command line. You just need to know the various commands and the parameters that you need to enter to get them done. Then we talked about requiring to do things on a schedule to keep your machines running at optimum performance. So every month, check to make sure your updates are applied. Check to make sure your drives are defragged. So, okay, checked. And troubleshooting, your standard 6 steps of troubleshooting apply. It doesn't matter whether it's an operating system, an application, or hardware. The same 6 steps of troubleshooting apply because those 6 steps are universal when we come to troubleshooting. And that brings us to the lovely end of this very, very long chapter.